Now I'm able to record. Thanks all. We have come to part 25, verse by verse study of Hebrews. And let's do some foundational verses before we go to Hebrews. This is John 3, verses 16 to 19. For God so loved the world, that is agape loved, cosmos, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him, the word believe in Greek implies you believe and do his works. So whosoever believes and does his works in him, that person should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Many people, including me, would see this is a very concise statement of the whole gospel. It's just summarized just the gospel. So every word in every sentence in these two verses, 16 to 19, is very important. Is one of those verses for the meditation. And then Paul makes an interesting statement here. Philippians 1, verses 15 to 20. Some indeed preach Christ, even of envy and strife, and some also of goodwill. Now, Paul uses preaching Christ equivalent to preaching gospel. He uses both of them interchangeably. You cannot actually separate Christ from gospel. It is trying to explain salvation without Savior. It doesn't make sense, at least from scriptures. And some indeed preach Christ, even of envy and strife, and some also of goodwill. There are two categories of teachers in Paul's time, and some are preaching with envy and strife against Apostle Paul, and some are of goodwill. The one preach Christ of contention, not sincerely, supposing to add affliction to my bonds, that is Apostle Paul's bonds, but the other of love, knowing that I am set for the defense of the gospel. Here, there's a competition between the preachers. And we know Apostle Paul was in a very, very unique position. He is a chosen vessel sent over to Gentiles as well as house of Israel. And he was commissioned to reveal great things of New Testament and gospel of Jesus Christ. But others were not happy with that. They're envious and they have strife. And they're also teaching gospel, but they wanted to add more affliction to Apostle Paul. And this is sad. Whenever you have competition between the teachers, I briefly mentioned this to one of my coworkers, and she said, you are undoing yourself when you have competition within yourselves. She's not even a serious Christian. If we have competition and contention, we're undoing ourselves. And in fact, if we are practicing and continuing with envy and strife and competition, we will not be in the kingdom. And also, we have not understood gospel. Gospel is such a precious thing, and it comes because of the precious blood of our Savior, who died on a horrific death on cross, and he wants it to be open to the whole cosmos. And you and I cannot privatize gospel or privatize Christ. Each teacher is given an insight into scriptures. In fact, several teachers is so healthy, and each teacher could see different things in the scripture and enrich brethren. And I don't see any reason that there should be competition or contention. And in the modern times, almost to the end of the age we have reached, there is no one teacher in this unique position where Apostle Paul was placed. He was set for the defense of gospel. There is no such unique position for any of the teachers. All of them work in faith, and all of them look to God and his Son to strengthen them, to open their eyes, to see things and enrich themselves first and enrich brethren. So there is no competition whatsoever. And what then? Notwithstanding, this is Paul's reaction to those who are in competition with him. Every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, and I therefore therein do rejoice. Yeah, I will rejoice. So Paul is rejoicing in spite of these difficulties because Christ is preached. For I know that this shall turn to my salvation. So all these difficulties would somehow contribute to his deeper conversion and to his salvation through your prayer and supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. So God's Spirit and the prayers of the brethren is greatly helpful for a teacher, for any teacher, for all teachers. The prayers of brethren help them and to focus on God, not on himself. And according to my earnest expectation and my hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but in spite of these people trying to put him to shame, but still Apostle Paul saying, I shall not be ashamed in anything, but that with all boldness, as always, so now also, Christ shall be magnified in my body. This is the goal of Apostle Paul. Jesus Christ has to be magnified in his body, in his mind, in his heart, in his spirit, whether it be by life or by death. Whether you are living or whether you are going to die, it doesn't matter. His focus and goal was Christ has to be magnified in his body. I mean, scriptures focus so much on God's Son, and some people don't see that way. They just make Jesus Christ disappear from this scene, unfortunately. That's why I'm coming back to these verses to teach the centrality of Jesus Christ. Tonight, as a preparation for Hebrews chapter 7, we finished 6 chapters and we are moving on to 7th chapter, and want to just deal with verses 1 to 17. But here, Hebrews writer, just like Apostle Paul, jumps between the concepts, and he expects the audience to be thorough with some of the Old Testament scriptures and personalities and stories. And when he wrote this letter originally, this epistle to Hebrew Christians, most of them are super familiar with the Old Testament scriptures, and some of them knew by heart. So we cannot know by heart. I haven't met anybody who can tell me back the whole Old Testament, but we have to get ready to be in the shoes of this Hebrews author's audience. So I want to take some time and set the stage for Hebrews chapter 7, actually 7, 8, 9, 10, 4 chapters. I want to discuss briefly about the children of Israel and different tribes and their genealogy, and also children of Israel, Levites, they have special role, tribe of Levi, and priests and tabernacle. And then we will segue to Melchizedekian priesthood of Lord Jesus Christ. And there are interesting patterns God lays out when he built a construct called Israel. There is a fascinating thinking and design and architecture from God's side when he raised Israel and built it. And then he later on, when we come to New Covenant, New Testament, he uses these patterns, the well-defined patterns, and to further enhance us to more spiritual understanding of himself and his son and his throne. So first he is building patterns, and as we go through these different tribes and genealogies, uh, keep an eye, a spiritual eye open, so that you see the patterns also. And we have mixed audience here. Some are super familiar with the genealogies, some are not. And when I visited Waco congregation, most of them told me that they're unfamiliar with the Old Testament scriptures, especially the tribes of Israel and what happened. And I was very surprised. I always assumed that everybody is super familiar. So lot of for lots of people it could be a repetition. Just please bear with me. And my goal is, at least I hope to add at least one new point tonight to you. And the whole Israel starts with one man called Terah. Terah is the person, and the whole story rotates around his children. And he is less known person, and he is father of Abraham. Now, Abraham is his son, and he has other sons, Nahor and Haran. And Abraham has his wife Sarah, and then Sarah gives birth to Isaac, and Isaac marries Rebekah. Rebekah happens to be daughter of Bethuel, and who is daughter of Nahor. So they're just family. Same we can see Isaac's son Jacob. Jacob also marries Rachel and Leah. They are sons of Laban, and who is son of Bethuel and son of Nahor. And so the whole family is well within the descendants of Terah. So let's begin with Abraham. Now God has great plan to raise a nation called Israel, and he chooses this nation among all the nations of earth, and he places his name on this nation, and he blesses them above every other nation, and he puts his presence in the midst of them, and he calls them light. You are the light to Gentiles. The Gentiles comprises every other nation, and he sends forth to bear fruit of his name, of his light, and of his truth. And he makes a covenant with this entity called Israel, so that they stand as a light, and then all the nations would see this glory and this blessing and the blessedness of this people, and they will come and perhaps consider why we are not so blessed, and they might perhaps consider the Israel's God, and then they would also repent and come to Israel and tell us about your God who is blessing you. So all nations would ultimately come to God. That was the original plan, and God makes a covenant with them. Let's begin with Abraham, and Abraham marries Sarah, and God promises that he would give a seed, Isaac. And Sarah was impatient, and even though she and Abraham believed in God's promises, and she makes this experiment. She gives her maidservant Hagar to Abraham to bear a son. And then here we have Ishmael. And then after that, and after many, many years, when they are past their childbearing age, we have Isaac. And Isaac marries Rebekah, and this is a great story. And then they get two sons, Esau and Jacob. And Jacob marries, he wants to marry Rachel, but Laban deceives him, and he gives Leah, older daughter, to Jacob, and for serving 7 years, and Jacob has to serve 7 more years to get Rachel. Between that, both the women just take the example of Sarah, and they give their maid servants, Zilpah, that is Leah's servant, and Bilhah, Rachel's servant, and we have children through the wife, and wife so much not loved. This is the wife loved, and wife not so loved, and their maidens, and we have 12 tribes here. We have Reuben, Simon, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and we have Joseph and Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali. And then from Joseph, you have Manasseh and Ephraim. Now, this is the route most important for us to understand Israel and how God laid the patterns. And when I say these persons are important, I'm not saying other persons are of lesser value. They are not. God is not a respecter of persons. He has same value for anybody else in the other branches that came out of Abraham, same as these people. But God has a plan. He wants to establish a pattern as an example for everybody to see. So that is the reason he built this nation called Israel. And many people may not know Abraham. After Sarah died and Hagar was sent out, he marries Keturah, and he also have children. And Ishmael, who is born to Hagar, also has several children. And then these get intermarried with Esau, and then you have whole people. And God said the promise goes to Isaac. Ishmael came by will of flesh of Sarah and Abraham, but Isaac came by will of God because of promise of God. So it's a promised seed that we will shortly see. So, and there is also a concept called birthright. The birthright went to Isaac, and from Isaac, birthright went to Jacob. So Esau is left out, and Ishmael is left out, and Keturah and her children, they were all left out. The birthright passes on to Jacob, and from Jacob, it goes, he has 12 sons, but it goes to Joseph. And from Joseph, it goes to Ephraim. So that is the birthright. Birthright is a double portion of inheritance, and rest of them get their portion, but the birthright, whoever gets the birthright, there is a double inheritance, and there are other things associated with the birthright. And here you can see Jacob. Jacob himself kinds of deceives his father, and he says he is Esau, and steals the birthright. And by deception, he takes away the birthright. And you can just study Jacob's life and how much betrayal and deception he faces in his life. God says, whatever you sow, you would reap. First, his father-in-law Laban would deceive him, and then his children would deceive him by selling away Joseph. He is full of sorrows and full of betrayal. He himself is victim of betrayal. So the deception never pays off. Just be truthful always. And you can see the children of Israel. And Reuben is the first child born of Leah, and second is Simeon, and third is Levi. Levi is important because the whole priesthood and service of God would come to them. So Levi is very important. And then Judah is also important because king would come out of Judah. Scepter shall not depart from Judah. And then Joseph, of course, is very important. So these three characters are important. Doesn't mean others are less important, but the story revolves around these individuals. And they marry Hittites and Hivites, and Esau goes far away from the genetics of Abraham and Sarah. Let's see a few scriptures, and these are patriarchs, and it is interesting, the whole Israel, even the names God gives them and builds this construct called Israel. And he calls a person named Abram, and he gives the name Abraham. Let's see Genesis 17, verses 3 to 7. Verse 3, and Abraham fell on his face, and God talked with them, and saying, as for me, behold, my covenant is with thee. God begins Israel, the whole thing, with a covenant. And God is a God of covenants. Even though you can approach God as a created being, God being your creator, you have a special relationship with God. You can approach him at any time, but God wants more consistent relationship, more binding relationship based on some conditions and terms. That's where the covenant comes. So it's a covenantal relationship he establishes with this man called Abram. So behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. So he makes a big promise to Abraham that I will make you a father of many nations. And neither shall thy name anymore be called Abram. The word Abram means exalted father, but thy name shall be Abraham, father of a multitude. So the Hebrew meaning sometimes throw a good light on what God is doing. So Abraham is made Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee. God sometimes speaks in past tense, even though it was not fulfilled, even though it is yet far in future, far, far, far in future, but it is a done deal for God. And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee, and I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed. This is important. Thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. So God promises that he will do an everlasting covenant. And first he makes a covenant with Abraham, and then he talks about an everlasting covenant with Abraham's seed. Genesis 17, verses 15 to 16, even Sarah, the name he gives. And God said unto Abraham, as for Sarai, that is her original name, As for Sarai, thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, which means princess, but Sarah, noble woman. I think it's an enhanced role than her previous name, shall be her name. And I will bless her and give thee a son also of her. Yeah, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations, and she is also kings of the people shall be of her. So from her womb would come many nations, and also from her womb kings would come out. It's a great blessing, and it is physically fulfilled. You can go through First Kings and Second Kings. So many kings have come out of Sarah's womb, but this is way, way, way beyond physical, because she represents New Jerusalem. Out of her womb come several kings, and she's truly a noble woman, both in shadow as well as in substance. Genesis 17, verses 19 to 21, Isaac and Jacob were also, names were given, especially Isaac. God gives that name. And for Jacob, he also gives a new name. Genesis 17, verses 19 to 21. And God said, Sarah, thy wife, shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. So Sarah and Abraham actually laughs when the angel of Lord tells them that they would have child when they were past the childbearing age. Perhaps that has something to do with the meaning, but Isaac comes from God, the name, just like Abraham and Sarah. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant. So this everlasting covenant, where he said, with thy seed, I will make an everlasting covenant. Now he says, with Isaac, I will establish an everlasting covenant, and which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this time in the next year. So in the next year, perhaps next aeon, the true Sarah, New Jerusalem, and Isaac is a picture of Jesus Christ, where the everlasting new covenant would be made. And last presentation, we somewhat touched upon this point, the typology of between Isaac and Jesus Christ. Genesis 32, 27 to 28, Jacob's name is changed to Israel. And he said unto him, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And this is after Jacob wrestles with angel of the Lord, who is believed to be Jesus Christ in some kind of flesh form, so that Jacob has wrestled with him. At the end of the wrestling, kind of Jacob wins, and Jacob would not let him go unless you bless me. And at that point, this angelic being asks him, what is your name? And he answers Jacob. Previously, the same question was asked by Isaac. Isaac was blind, uh, probably legally blind. He couldn't see clearly, blurred vision because of old age. At that time, Jacob disguises himself as his brother to get the blessing. And when his father asks, like, what is your name? He tells his brother's name, not his name. And somehow God mysteriously asked that question again, what is his name? And he truthfully answers, Jacob. Perhaps God is telling him, you did tell a lie, but anyway, I'm working with you and your descendants. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob. Jacob is heel holder or supplanter, but Israel. So Jacob's name is changed to Israel. The word Israel means God prevails. Uh, Instead of a man prevails. And as for a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and has prevailed. In this wrestling, he prevailed against God. And God says, your name would be Israel. Here we see the birth of Israel, the construct called Israel. So far, we have seen all the patriarchs, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Israel. All four names were given by God. So God has something deeper, something bigger, something higher when he gives these names to the people, and he builds something huge out of these people, which we come to see shortly. And Jacob turned Israel has children. We have just seen 12 sons. And let's see how the sons are, how each son would branch out into a tribe. And here, we should not assume people are more righteous, even at the time of patriarchs. People have same imperfections, same weaknesses, same envy, jealousy, hatred, contention, manipulation, just like us. God was patiently working with these people to build a pattern, to build a construct called Israel. Just like he is working with us, we are not any more holier than them, and we are equal to them. We are equally manipulative and equally envious, jealous, and filled with hatred and wrath, but still God patiently works with us just like that he has worked with them. We will shortly see and how these things play out. Just I want to see how even the birth of these heads of these tribes and their mothers and their fathers have to go through. And God kind of intervenes at almost every step, and he judges between what they do. And previous presentations, we learned God reveals himself through his judgments, through his actions. This is one of the finer places where we can understand God, how God thinks and how God judges and how God operates. Let's see how the 12 uh, tribes of Israel have their beginnings. Genesis 29, verses 29 to 35. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah. So now Rachel is most loud, and other women kind of less loud. And her father Laban gave his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. And let's stop here. Here, like he loves Rachel, and then he makes a deal with her father Laban, and Laban puts a condition: work for me for 7 years, and then I will give my daughter to you. And after 7 years, he cheats him and sends his other daughter, Leah. And he does not like Leah and does not love her, but he is stuck with her. And then Laban comes and puts a condition: 7 more years, then I will give Rachel to you. And then he has to work 7 more years, and then naturally, if you are Rachel, you are the loud person, and the other person got ahead of you and got that man, so you hate that woman. And when the Lord saw that the Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So when you are hating somebody, you are not on God's side. Leah was on God's side, and Lord opened her womb, and Rachel was still barren. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. This is the firstborn of Israel or Jacob, and which means behold a son. For she said, surely the Lord has looked upon my affliction. Now, therefore, my husband will love me. Her problem is Jacob does not love her. It's a forced marriage. And I've seen few women in my life. Uh, they they don't think that their husband is loving them uh, uh, strong enough or deep enough, and they want to get more children so that he is bound at least to them because of the children. So greater number of children, greater chances of your husband that he would love you and stick with you. So that is the thinking. If you are one of such woman, never look to that husband, that man who doesn't want to love you. Look to holy, righteous God for your solutions. Never look to a man, for in man there is no help. Even in princess, there is no help. Look to God, and God would somehow bless you. And Rachel could have looked to God, but she was hating Leah. And we see this more in operation. So we have firstborn Reuben, and we have the whole tribe of Reuben comes out of him. Verse 33, and she conceives again, that is Leah, and bare a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I was hated, he has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. So Lord heard her cry, and she got Simeon. So she got two children, hoping that Jacob or Israel would love her, but he is bent on Rachel. Verse 34, she conceives again and bare a son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him three sons. See this cyclic thinking, like your thinking reinforces you to think in the same way again and again. Instead of looking to God, you trust in something. Therefore was his name called Levi, so joined to. So she bears three sons, and we have three patriarchs of Israel. Verse 35, and she conceived again, wow, and bare a son, and she said, now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, praised, and left bearing. She's past the bearing age, or I don't think they have contraceptives in those days. So we can safely assume she's done. She is past bearing age. She got four sons, and she's happy with her sons, and she's also thankful to God. See, even though she was not loved by her husband, she was thankful to God, and God gave her four sons, right? So an important lessons are embedded in these verses. Let's look at other tribes. Genesis 30, verses 1 to 8. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, now Rachel becomes very bitter. And Rachel envied her sister, just like us, said unto Jacob, give me children, or else I die. So this is last threat. And she thought Jacob would give her children. And then Jacob in his right senses, he answers rightly. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel. And he said, am I God's stead? So am I God? Who has withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? So you're asking a question to a wrong person. I'm not the one who decides whether you bear children or not. It is God who decides. And then verse 3, and she said, behold, my maid Bilhah. There she goes, one mistake after another. And she gives her maid Bilhah, go into her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. So when God delays his blessing, after a while waiting, we tend to resort to our own devices, which gives in lots of displeasure, lots of uh, problems in our lives. Never resort to your own solution. Look to God. Look to God and wait, even if it is longer. It is always good for you. When you take this step in unfaithfulness, you know you are taking a wrong step. You know you are taking it in a hasty way, but you can take a step in faith. That is good thing. But most of the steps are not taken in faith. They were taken against the faith. And she sends her maid Bilhah, just like Sarah did. She sent Hagar to get Ishmael. So Bilhah is sent. She also bare upon my knees that I may also have children by her. So she's looking for a proxy, for a tool to get her a son. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife. And Jacob went unto her, and Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. So here comes bear Jacob a son. So Jacob is father. So they got son. And then Rachel, even though it is not her biological son, but she rejoices. And Rachel said, God has judged me and has also heard my voice and has given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan, a judge, a Dan. Now here, even though she played this proxy thing, but she still thinks that God has blessed her. So it's a possibility. We can convince ourselves that it is coming from God. It may or may not be. Verse 7, and Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again. So Rachel is not blessed directly, but Rachel's maid is blessed. And again she conceives and bears Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali, wrestling. So we have these people so far, and let's quickly see Gad, Asher, and Issachar, and Zebulun. Genesis 30, verses 9 to 13. When Leah saw that she had left bearing age, this is again coming back to first sister, she took Zilpah, her maid. So there's competition now. She gives her maiden and gave her to Jacob, her to Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop cometh. And she called his name Gad, a troop. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher, happy. So we have so far several people have come, and Rachel is still barren. And one would hope that Rachel finally at least learned some lesson and begin to look to God. Genesis 30, verses 17 to 20. And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob the fifth son. So Leah again bore a son, and Leah said, God has given me my hire, because I have given him my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar. There is recompense. And verse 19, and Leah conceived again and bare Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God has endued me with good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him six sons. See, the same thinking comes, like instead of four sons, now I have given him six sons. Now he should love me more. Love me more, love me more. And she calls his name Zebulun. Let's come to Joseph and Benjamin. This is a fascinating story, how story takes new turns. And Genesis 30, verses 22 to 24. And God remembered Rachel. So sometimes, even though Rachel was not looking to God, at some point, God chooses to show his mercy and his agape. God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. So God hearkened to her, indicates that she is now learning and praying, perhaps with with genuineness of heart. Maybe she prayed before, but not that depth of genuineness of her heart. We don't know. We're just guessing. And God opened her womb, and she conceived and bare a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. In the Middle East, even in many Eastern countries today, if you do not have children, you have a reproach in society as a barren woman. And that's more difficult for her to take. And she called his name Joseph. Finally, long wait would give you a reward. Joseph, actually, the birthright goes to him. Yahweh has added and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. So this is what. And finally, after many, many years, she bears second son. Let's quickly read Genesis 35. We are jumping from 30 to 35. These chapters go very long time, many years would pass between just like Texas highways, between the exits you have so many miles and miles, then the next exit comes. So Genesis chapters are also like that. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spoke with him Bethel. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was built a little way to come to Ephrath. And Rachel travailed. So Rachel is about to bear a son, and she had hard labor. So you don't have modern gynecology specialists. And it came to pass when she was in hard labor, that the midwife said unto her, fear not, that thou shalt have this son also. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, so she's ready to die, and she gives birth, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, which is son of my sorrow. But Jacob, his father, called him Benjamin, son of right hand. So here Benjamin comes, the last child, 12, and we have all the 12 counted. Interestingly, we have 12 tribes, and Levi is not numbered, not counted among the 12. So if you take out Levi, you have only 11 people. But how do we come to 12 tribes of Israel? That's an interesting thing. Most of you might know already. Numbers 1:47 to 51. Here God says, don't number Levites. But the Levites, after the tribe of their fathers, were not numbered among them. For the Lord has spoken unto Moses, saying, only thou shalt not number the tribe of Levi, neither take the sum of them among the children of Israel. But thou shalt appoint Levites over the tabernacle of testimony, over the vessels of thereof, and over all that belong to it. And they shall bear the tabernacle and all the vessels thereof, and they shall minister unto it, and shall encamp around the tabernacle. So they are wholly and fully dedicated to tabernacle and service to God. So they are not counted, the children, rest of the tribes. And when the tabernacle was set forward, the Levites shall take it down. When the tabernacle is pitched, the Levites shall set it up. The stranger that comes nigh shall be put to death. The strangers should not come near the temple. They would be put to death. And if people do not put him to death, God will send fire from heaven and kill that stranger. It is exclusively for the children of Israel, the whole tabernacle. And this is about Levi should not be numbered. And there is a prophecy for Judah that scepter shall not depart from it. The whole Genesis 49. This is where Jacob, when he's old and ready to die, he kind of puts blessings on his children, Jacob/Israel. And for each son, he prophesies that it happens. You can read the whole chapter 49, but he makes an interesting statement about Judah I wanted to bring to your attention. The scepter This is the rod with which the kings would rule. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor lawgiver between his feet. The between his feet is his descendants. And until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. So here she says, very interesting thing, out of your loins for Judah, a person would come, and he would hold the scepter as a king, which is obviously referring to Jesus Christ. And until Shiloh comes, so the scepter shall not depart from Judah, the lawgiver between his feet, until Shiloh comes. The Shiloh word is a derivative of shalom. We call Sabbath shalom, peace, the peace. So peace is a metaphorical representation for Jesus Christ. He is called Prince of Peace. And so until Jesus Christ comes, uh, when he comes, the scepter shall be fulfilled. It shall not depart from Judah. So the scepter shall not depart from the tribe of Judah. In a sense, other tribes will not contribute to Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ has to come with the law within the tribe of Judah. So that privilege and blessing is prophesied for Judah, and Jesus Christ comes from the tribe of Judah. Uh, Unto him shall the gathering of the people be. All people shall be gathered to Jesus Christ. That what he said, right? If I am raised, I will gather all to myself. So the gathering will be. And another interesting thing is, uh, most people would agree, and I will also agree. It is Moses who brought the Ten Commandments and the law, and Moses belongs to not Judah. He belongs to another tribe, Levi. Here, interestingly, Jacob prophesies that lawgiver shall come from Judah, from Judah. So he was prophesying about another lawgiver that would eventually come, the ultimate lawgiver that has to be Jesus Christ. So Moses is a type and shadow of lawgiving, which is who is from Levi. So this prophecy of lawgiving cannot be applied to Moses. And just I will read this. This is a fascinating prophecy. It will take a separate message to go through this. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass colt unto the choice wine, he washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes, and his eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Here we have Abraham and Hagar, Ishmael gone out of picture, except Galatians. Paul brings them back to discuss about the covenants. Hagar represents old covenant and Sarah represents new covenant. But Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, Esau is gone, and the picture revolves around Jacob. And you have 4 women for Jacob, and you have all the tribes, and Levi is taken out. So we have 1 Reuben, 2nd Simeon, and then 3rd would be Judah, and 4th is Dan and Naphtali, and 5th Gad and Asher, 6th and 7th, and 8th comes back to Leah, Issachar, and 9th Zebulun, and 10 is 10. Interestingly, Joseph is not counted, but Joseph's sons are counted among the tribes of Israel. Since Levi is taken out, and Manasseh and Ephraim, they were added, and Benjamin remains 12. So instead of Joseph, you have 2 children. So 1 is added to the count and 1 is removed. So you have 12 tribes of Israel. And Joseph marries Asenath. She's an Egyptian daughter of some priest. We don't know her. We don't know much about it. Maybe she's Egyptian. Maybe she's Hebrew. Perhaps you can add more light at the end. Uh, This is about Israel. This is all Israel. And Levites were given service to the temple, that is tabernacle, and service of the tabernacle. They don't have inheritance, and God clearly says, children of Israel, all the rest of the tribes have give 1/10 of the produce of the land, a tithe. A tithing is introduced here under the old covenant. Numbers 18:23 to 16, but the Levites shall do service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they shall bear their iniquity. I don't know what this means, bear their iniquity. Uh, it shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that among the children of Israel, they have no inheritance. So they have no inheritance, but tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as a heave offering unto the Lord, I have given them to the Levites to inherit. Therefore, I have said unto them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance. So there is a thing called heave offering. The whole children of Israel have to give the heave offering to God. So that is connected to tithing. So the tithes belong to God, and children of Israel give tithes to God, but God here delegates uh, Levites to receive tithes on behalf of him. So they collect the tithes. There's a clear commandment here, verse 24. And further, uh, the sons of Aaron who are in as priests, they receive also tithes from Levites. Verse 25, and the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, when ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up a heave offering for it for the Lord, even the 10th part of the tithe. So Levites also would give the 1/10 of them as heave offering to the tabernacle or temple, which is received by priests, the sons of Aaron. And the Levi tribe, we have Aaron and his sons, all his sons, Aaron downwards, they were chosen to serve as priests in the uh, office of priests in the tabernacle. We quickly look at this. Exodus 27:21, in the tabernacle of the congregation, outside the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall order it from evening to morning before the Lord, and it shall be a statute forever unto their generation on behalf of the children of Israel. And Exodus 28, verses 1 to 4, and take thou unto thee Aaron thy brother and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. So here God is establishing a priest office. This is called priesthood of Aaron, or Aaron's order. A priesthood of Aaron's order is being established, because we would later see Melchizedekian priesthood, another order. So his sons, and thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother, and for glory and beauty. And thou shalt speak unto all that are wise hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. And so on, he and his sons are consecrated, and they were given beautiful garments, especially Aaron, the high priest. It's just dazzling, and with all studded with the jewels and decked in glory. It itself takes a separate message. So sons of Levi are not given inheritance. They are not numbered with Israel. And interestingly, you can see the Levi has three sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. So Gershon's sons are Gershonites, and Kohathites, and Merarites. From Kohath, there is a guy called Amram. From Amram, he has two sons, Aaron and Moses. He has a daughter also called Miriam, and Aaron is the first. And Aaron and his sons, they would be serving in the office of priests in the tabernacle. So, order of Aaron. And you can see Moses is his brother. Moses comes from tribe of Levi. And I will briefly discuss the layout of the camp of Israel. When Israelites are going through this wilderness, they are given specific instructions from God how they have to lay out, how they pitch their tents in a particular fashion. Always the tabernacle is at the center, in the middle, and the tabernacle is protected by different layers of different groups of people, and and it is the center for the whole camp. And here he says, Levi are not among the children of Israel, and Levites are responsible for tearing down the temple tabernacle and carrying them, and then again setting this up. The way it works is, once the Israel has camped for quite some days or months, and then the glory of God, which is centered on the tabernacle, it raises up and up, it goes up, and that is indication that it is time to move. And Joshua and Moses and all the people, elders, would watch that it is going up, and they give command to blow the trumpets, and everybody would blow the trumpets, and those perhaps would be relayed by other trumpeters, and whole congregation of Israel would get ready. This is time to move. And so they dismantle their tents and put everything on their carts and ready to move, and the whole assembly moves. It's a magnificent scene just to watch. Perhaps I hope God would show us some kind of video of how that happened. That's what he's telling. Levites would take down, and other than Levites, nobody can touch, nobody can carry. There are strict rules. Any violation is met with death. So a stranger that cometh nigh shall be put to death. So this is very important. Let's quickly see layout of these things. So when you have tabernacle in the middle, on the eastern side, God says Judah and Issachar and Zebulun, all three tribes and their children should camp and protect from east side. So you can read yourself Numbers 2. The whole chapter of Numbers 2 and 3 tells the layout. It's a fascinating thing. And then south side, he puts Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. And west side, you have Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. And finally, north side, you have Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. So you have all the tribes on all sides according to their designated location with respect to the tabernacle. And then Levites, here it's a more specialized functions for the Levites. We have spoken about Gershonites. All the Gershonites, they have to camp on the westward of the tabernacle, and they have charge of their sons in the tabernacle of the congregation. Shall be their responsibility is tabernacle, the tent, covering thereof, and hanging of the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the other tribe is Kohathites. They have to camp on southward, and they are responsible for ark and the table and candlestick, altars, and vessels of sanctuary. And the third tribe is Merarites, and they shall pitch northwards, and under their custody and charge, boards of tabernacle, bars thereof, pillars thereof, sockets thereof. So they have their responsibilities. Whole tabernacle is divided among the three tribes of Levi, sub-tribes of Levi, and each one is responsible for certain aspect or certain part of the tabernacle. We can go into more details in the coming presentations if you are interested. This is very, very, very fascinating. And then Moses and Aaron and their families, they will pitch on the east side of the tabernacle. But those who encamped before the tabernacle towards east, even before the tabernacle of the congregation eastwards, shall be Moses and Aaron and his sons, keeping the charge of the sanctuary of the children of Israel. And the stranger that cometh nigh shall be put to death. The whole thing, the whole layout is to prevent strangers, non-Israelites or uncircumcised or Gentiles should not ever approach near tabernacle. So you have layers of protection. The thing. This is the tabernacle. You have first layer, Merari, Gershon, and Kohathites on three sides, and Moses and priests on east side. This is the first layer of protection. In fact, tabernacle has its own walls, which are dismantleable, and that itself is another layer of protection. And then the actual tabernacle, that also is a structure. So another layer of protection. So 1, 2, 3, and then the fourth is outer layer. It is almost like our loops, ring roads. Houston has 3 or 4 ring roads. So you have all the tribes, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, so Gad, Simeon. So it is surrounded. It must have been magnificent sight to see the layout, an aerial view of how the tabernacle is at the center. The tabernacle, and especially glory of God, is the center. It is glory of the whole nation, whole congregation. It is their boast. It is their pride. Especially Aaron is a representation of that glory of God in his beautiful attire and with all studded with all the jewels. He represented God for the whole congregation. He was alone, was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies and do sacrifices and do the sprinkling of blood so that the whole congregation of Israel is reconciled to this great Yahweh every year on Day of Atonement. He represented to children of Israel his Yahweh, and he also represented the children of Israel to Yahweh. So both ways. So that is the glory, that is the beauty, and this is a great nation. And God calls them, O Israel, you are the only people I know among the all families of earth. So God knows only Israel, not that he is unaware of the other nations. The word know always indicates a covenantal relationship. And God also says, you are light to the Gentiles. So this is the glory, this is the beauty, this is glory of Aaron and glory of children of Israel. And this whole pattern, including the names, they all came from God, and God built this structure, this construct, these patterns associated with Israel with great care, with great diligence, and with his infinite wisdom. He must have planned and refined the plan and finally laid it out for you and me to study and learn from this great people. Now, Abraham, fast, instead of moving forward, go backwards, roll the tape backwards. Before all the children of Israel ever came into existence, arrived, uh, it was still Abraham and Sarah. And at that time, his nephew Lot was taken over, kidnapped by other tribes, and he goes and fights and redeems he's not redeems. He kind of defeats the other kingdoms, other people, and brings Lot back. And when he comes back, then he meets this a priest, a different priest, not of the order of Aaron, but order of Melchizedek. And verse 18, and Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought, brought forth bread and wine. Does this strike bell? Bread and wine, which is Passover, Jesus Christ. And he was a priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him, that is Abraham. And blessed be Abram. He is still Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which has delivered thine enemies into thine hands. And Abraham gave tithes of all the booty that he got to this great person, King of Salem, the Melchizedekian priesthood. God introduced Melchizedekian priesthood way ahead in advance, just to give us a hint that another priesthood of Melchizedek would come. And later on, he introduces to us the pattern of Aaron, the order of Aaron, how spectacular, how beautiful Aaronic priesthood and whole Israel was. And it serves as a pattern, and it served us as a shadow so that we all can come to another greater priesthood after the order of Melchizedek. The whole chapter 7 starts with the Melchizedekian king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from slaughter of the kings, blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all, first by being interpretation, king of righteousness, and after that also king of Salem, which is king of peace. And this person whom Abraham met and paid tithes, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abides a priest continually. There is so much we can discuss. This is fully loaded verses. I want to take this up in the next presentation. So I would end the presentation here.
Okay, brethren, well, that will open up the room then for discussion. Rebecca had a question about Melchizedek being the king of Salem. In Hebrews 7:1, Melchizedek, king of Salem, in respect, and the question is respect to Psalm 76:1 and 2, where it kind of seems to call Salem and Zion as different places. But I'm thinking what that verse really is doing, you know, I'll quote it here for us here in a second. Let me just copy that where I can put it into the room. Oops.
There are physical places, Salem and
What I'm wondering here, and this is the question that's been asked on the internet some too, and I looked it up, and I think what it's saying is that Salem and Zion are the same place, because God dwells in this tabernacle, but he also dwells in Zion, and both of them are in Jerusalem. So I think what it's saying is that Jerusalem is Salem, and that the Melchizedek priest that we were just talking about was the king of Jerusalem at the time, only it wasn't called Jerusalem then. Does that sound right?
That's right. We are talking about two things. One is types and shadows, and other is substance. Even though there is a physical town called Jerusalem, physical mountain called Zion, but New Testament takes a completely different take. It is taking us into spiritual realm, New Jerusalem and Mount Zion. And there may be a king in Jerusalem, but he is short-lived. He's just like a man. But here, Melchizedek is without mother, without father, without beginning. that does not apply to any human being, I think. We will discuss more in the Hebrews section, which I just gave a reading, but we would discuss more in the next presentation. I just wanted to give background today for this 7.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that they call Melchizedek, and you're probably right there, Paul, in a sense that Salem means peace. It's not necessarily a place, but it also says that Melchizedek was the king of Salem and was also the king of peace. Somewhere there it says that. And of course, Christ is referred to as being a king of peace, or something like that. I can't remember the verbiage. But
King of righteousness and king of peace.
Yeah. So, and of course, Melchizedek, I believe, was Christ in the Old Testament there. So.
That Hebrews writer makes it clear.
Yeah.
As he goes forward, he says, this priest has come from tribe of Judah.
Yeah, my question was just, I get all of that, was where it talks about in Psalms where it says God is known in Judah, his name is great in Israel, and his tabernacle is in Salem, and his dwelling place in Zion. I get that it was a physical place, but I was wondering, does that mean that there's also Salem where the tabernacle is in heavenly Jerusalem? That was really my question.
Yeah, both are right. There is a physical layer and there's a spiritual layer. You're right. I mean, in a very small way,
when he speaks of Zion in that psalm, because remember, where is the tabernacle that Jesus dwells now? It's not the temple in Jerusalem. Zion, or we are his temple. He dwells in us. That's the Zion he's talking about in Psalms. It's us.
Psalms 65?
That's when he says Zion, he's talking about us.
76.
76.
Yeah.
Because he dwells in Zion. That's where Christ dwells today.
Yeah, and Jesus
in his people, not in a physical tabernacle.
Absolutely right. Jesus himself said, things written of me in Psalms and prophets have to be fulfilled. So even though sometimes they refer to the immediate physical place or physical person or a king when the psalm was originally written, but there is always a layer that is going much higher, much beyond. So,
prophecy often have 2 or more fulfillments.
yes.
They resonate as the scroll unrolls. It fulfills here, it means this, and later on is fulfilled elsewhere.
Sure. Yep. I don't know if I fully understood your question, Rebecca. Fully answered your question.
No, that does, yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
Well, no, I thought that it was a physical place and a spiritual place. Like I thought, but I thought about the 2 elements of it actually being someplace physical at one point. But then when it talks about, where it is now, I was thinking it was more a spiritual concept as in heavenly Jerusalem now. I wasn't thinking about it being us. So.
Absolutely, that's where it is.
Yeah.
We are his tabernacle.
Lately, I've been thinking about a lot of why God chooses an individual to do his prophecies. I mean, what triggers that decision in God? Like you were going through all of this about the different children and how one in particular, how God seemed to hate Esau and chose Jacob. But it was like they were chosen even before Jacob was born. So correct. Esau hadn't had an opportunity yet to turn out the way he did, And so you wonder why that was so. And even at that, Jacob and his mom, for that matter, were being pretty devious in the way they stole the birthright away from Esau and all like that. And so it makes you wonder what is it that is deciding God on who to choose and who not to? It's curiosity in my head.
My take on that is God talking about election. He wants to somehow communicate to us his election process. So before even children born, either doing good or evil, he said, I loved Jacob and hated Esau. So he's establishing a pattern to show us his election of grace. According to his timetable, he would reach everybody else. Not that there is a partiality, but his will precedes our will. That's why Apostle Paul, everybody came like, not by will of man, not by will of flesh, but by will of God, we became apostles.
So it was really so that we could see the process that God used and learn from it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Any other thoughts to that? I think at one point Buddy raised hand, not sure.
I didn't see it. Buddy, go ahead.
Here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to comment on Levi bearing iniquity, and the only place you really see where Levi did something really nasty was when he and Simeon went out and killed that town because the man had raped Dinah, their sister, and that's possibly what it is, because when you go to the Hebrew, it doesn't really say their iniquity. It just says, let me go over here. It just says Avon, moral evil. So that may be what it's speaking of, because that's the only place I can ever find where Levi did anything that would.
I was thinking same thing. He and his brother both are like, they were called evil, vicious by their own father, Jacob.
Yeah, and Levi, especially when you look at the history of Levi, they were always pretty tough people, pretty hard people. And you notice that the Levites were given the authority to judge, and so they judge very strictly. So that may be it, may not be, but that's my take on it.
I think it's good point to that. I was thinking that it meant that since they have to do the physical sacrifices for the sins of Israel, then in effect they were bearing the sins of Israel in that way. But it might also tie into what they did, and they have that role because of what they did. So it kind of works both ways there.
That's so true, Raymond. It's all these sacrifices would ultimately culminate in one sacrifice of Lord Jesus Christ, and that's where the Melchizedekian priesthood. When we come to New Testament, we have to see how the New Testament authors are interpreting these scriptures. That's where the spiritual understanding comes.
Yeah.
And one comforting thing.
Our heads in this book to learn those things, as we read more and more. I've got more time on my hands now than I've had in the past. So I'm reading a lot more, and I'm seeing things come together that I never saw before. Nothing major, but understanding, it becomes more understandable.
Yeah. And one thing I take great comfort is, if you look at the men and women in these stories, they're just like us. They're not super righteous people, right?
Yeah.
Yet God worked with them. So that gives me hope that God would continue to work with us in spite of all our sins.
Yeah. It's a big hope.
Is this all super familiar, and am I just repeated what you already know? Or like, where do I stand?
Well, no, you gave us an in-depth teaching. We knew these things, but it's kind of surface thing. Or how many times have we studied that? Taking the time to really read through it and compare notes and look at the overall picture. It's been years and years since I did that. And really, the only time I did do that was when I was going through a correspondence course. And you know how fast you go through those correspondence courses. Or at least I did. but this is more in depth. This gives us a more in depth. It is refreshing, yeah, but it's also giving us a deeper understanding because you're pulling things from different areas to support it. That's important. So yeah, I think it was very well worth going over this again, if you will, because it was giving us a deeper understanding. Go ahead, buddy.
Now, one thing that that I learned is that I had always thought that that he had to wait 7 years to marry Rachel, but it specifically says that he married her right away and just had to work 7 years for her. I thought that was very interesting because I had always had in my mind that he had to wait another 7 years, which would have been real hard for a man to do, you know.
Well, I think he had to work 7 years after he married Leah. I don't think he would have trusted him to go another 7 years unless he let him.
No, that was very interesting because it just popped in my mind all of a sudden. Oh, I got it now. You know? I had always thought he had to wait 7 years, and I thought, wow, that'd be really rough.
Yeah.
You know?
And he goes through so much sorrow in his life, betrayed by so many people.
Right.
Because of his one betrayal to take the birthright.
Yeah, that wasn't a freebie. Go ahead, Johnny.
I may be wrong. Maybe y'all probably know this. When Moses come down off the Mount Horeb, I think it was maybe the second time, and found the children of Israel. You know, you call it. They were just a debauchery. You know, maybe the golden calf. The tribe of Levi were not. They were the only tribe that was not participating in all that. So they become the Levitical priesthood. Right? I mean, is that nothing new?
No, I think they were already designated the priesthood by then. Yeah, because they had to take the tent up and down, but they proved their worth because they didn't get involved in the debauchery that was going on.
Yes, it's like a line in the sand, you know.
Yeah. No.
Aaron was also designated by that time. Aaron and his sons.
Oh yeah, right.
And he makes golden calf for them.
Well, that's right.
In the location, Mount Moriah, where Abraham, or we're going to call him Abraham now, because we know that's where he took Isaac to be sacrificed. That became Mount Moriah, and it became possibly Zion in the very center of the temple when he gets right down to it, the first temple, and probably the second temple too.
Yeah.
What is interesting, just a few years ago, I saw in a town in Paris, Tennessee, they had a life-size replica of the temple, and it had the showbread in it, the mercy seat, the whole workings of it, the laver, and where they'd go and have the burnt offerings there, and it was very interesting to see.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is now. You could probably look it up. It's probably somewhere out there in the United States.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing though, but it was very interesting to see.
I guess before we get too far off, you may have seen the email, but now tomorrow, instead of having a regular sermon, I'm going to play an hour and a half, and we'll have short music this session, but it's an hour and a half